Hello, and welcome to Social Studies School Service Young Citizens webinar, Summative Assessments, how we can utilize young citizens to meet and exceed state standards. I'm your host, Freddie Jesus. As instructors, we want to design custom learning assessments that help us gain feedback about what our students are learning. These learning assessments include informal, non-graded strategies and checkpoints, as well as informal assessments of student success in achieving course goals and learning outcomes. What is formative assessment? So I want to think about the analogy of learning to drive. You learn rules, you watch videos, and you practice with an instructor or a parent. You might mess up, learn to correct and navigate in different traffic settings. You don't take the test though. You're in practice mode. That's how I see formative assessment. The characteristics of formative assessments include learner-centered, teacher-directed, mutually beneficial assessments that can be tailored to specific disciplines and teaching context. It allows for students to achieve specific targeted standard-based learning goals within a set time frame. Formative assessments refers to the ongoing process students and teachers engage when they are focused on learning. They take stock in where they are currently with their work in relationship to the goal. They reflect and adjust. They take action to move closer to the goal. So what is summative assessment? So remember the driver's test analogy? The summative assessment is much like when you go take your driver's test. This is the goal. You want a certain grade, or you must show certain competency or mastery of your driving performance. So the process of arriving at a grade for a student, whether it's a test or assignment or an entire course, is known as summative assessment. Summative assessments could be exams, term papers. They're more formal, usually graded, and focused on letting students show a range of skills and knowledge. They require a considerable investment of time from the instructor and the student. So let's look at young citizens. Nystrom Young Citizens is focused on educational integrity, and they've carefully been developing young citizens according to 3 measures of educational content integrity. These are the national and state social studies standards, the college, career, and civic life framework for social studies, and the progression of depth of knowledge. Let's look at what those are. So the standards are going to, each state will have standards, and this tells us what students need to learn. The content has been planned to address your state social studies standards, as well as the National Council for Social Studies themes of social studies. So here we see Missouri, and we want our students to identify, select, and analyze and evaluate resources. We want them to visualize tools to communicate. We want them to understand and support fact and opinion or bias and different points of view. We want them conducting and presenting research from appropriate resources. And we want them developing research plans and resources and choosing a point of view finally and supporting that point of view. the four-stage process of the inquiry arc. Now, this is also called the C3 framework for social studies, and it points to how students are to go about learning. The framework was created by the National Council for Social Studies to provide guidance, enhancing the rigor of K through 12 civics, economics, geography, and history. So in this process, students will ask questions and investigate them. They'll look at solutions and consequences. They'll gather evidence and separate opinions from these claims. And then they'll take action. They'll communicate it or take action about what they've learned. The last piece that Nystrom Young Citizens has utilized is called depth of knowledge. This is a measurement of the complexity of the thinking task we ask the students to complete. The level of complexity is revealed through questions. So a level 1 of depth of knowledge would be questions such as, what can you recall? Who was, or how would you describe? A level 2 is more skill and concept-based. And it might inquire the student to have more conceptual knowledge or 2 or more steps. So how are two things alike, or how are they different? What steps are needed? Number 3 is strategic thinking, and it involves reasoning, like developing a plan or a sequence of steps. And then level 4 is an extended thinking. This is high cognitive thinking. Students will research and write a report, develop a persuasive argument using the information from 2 or more sources, and then look at what information that they have that supports the idea that they're researching. What assessment tools does Young Citizens offer? The first kind is hands-on learning. And scientists who study the brain know that we remember and understand much more when we actively engage with information rather than just passively receive it. Manipulating the new learning in various ways through processes and sensory modalities, the learner builds more interconnections between neural networks. This provides multiple pathways to retrieve the new learning from long-term memory. Now, some examples of hands-on assessment tools for young citizens include working with maps and globes. So, for example, a student might examine a map to find the shortest route from the library to the grocery store. Another example would be students using dry erase markers to locate information on washable globes. What formative assessment is there in Young Citizen? We want teachers to have a bag of tools to shape instruction to maximize learning for every student. This not only includes social studies concept, but skills that are so essential, such as thinking skills and language arts proficiency. So each chapter has a chapter pretest to allow for students to share what background knowledge they have. Then at each section level, there are oral questions, writing on maps, quick writes, simulations, arts and crafts, and activity sheets. Here we see an activity sheet for Chapter 1 of first grade, Lesson 1. And the topic is on what families do for us. And so students would cut apart the pictures and they would choose which things they need and they would glue them on the page. Another example of formative assessment is the quick write example. This is a second grade lesson where students have read Chapter 3 and they're learning about culture in their Young Citizens textbook. They're asked to make a list of celebrations and then choose a favorite one. The learner will go into greater detail, drawing a picture and writing a sentence about it. This personal connection is so important. The quick write is a great way to engage if students are picking up a concept or if they need more support or scaffolding. These are a few research opportunities where students in first, second, and third grade learn about how culture is a way of life. And they went above and beyond the Young Citizens textbook to research their own personal family heritage. As part of the unit, literature is shared. Here's a book, The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco. Finally, students share with their classmates the poster they made. So they completed independent research projects about their family heritage. Kevin is from China, his family, and Linda is her family heritage is from France. Next, we want to look at a formative assessment called group activity cards. Initially, using the group activity cards, you would utilize groups of students, and each student will have a job. They could be a reader, a timekeeper, a writer, an artist, and a presenter. So we're looking at their strengths and helping them collaborate in a group. Here is a second grade card, and there's different parts to the cards. Part A is informational text, in this case about a special day, St. Patrick's Day. Part B is where students would work to answer those questions. How is St. Patrick's Day celebrated? Why do they celebrate St. Patrick's Day? When? Things like that. Part C is going to be looking at pictures and reading captions, getting in those text features. Students will work together to answer these questions that go with the pictures on Part D. So looking at this St. Patrick's Day, you see questions that ask things like, do the people in the parade look like they're wearing special clothes? Why is the Chicago River green instead of red or purple? And then drawing and making a poster for a party. At the end of that time, letter E is where the students will choose one answer to the questions to share out to the class. So in second grade, for this group activity card set, there are 6 different holidays that are celebrated. Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day, Rosh Hashanah, Kwanzaa, Eid al-Fitr, and Mardi Gras. Let's look at what it might look like in first grade. So group activity cards in first grade, this is State Symbols, Chapter 5 for first grade. Notice the engaging pictures and questions. These will allow students to practice and connect with the content so that students are exposed to the needed rigor. Next, let's take a look at the example of 5th grade, where the students are examining the Civil War, Chapter 6. They will also study not just about the Civil War, but the contributions of Native Americans, immigrant peoples, African Americans, Latinos, and women. Students are developing perspective and point of view. This is so important as students learn about struggles and bravery. They will learn to appreciate different paths that people had to take to solve problems and survive. Leveled readers. This is another formative assessment that Young Citizens offers. Students can be able to, they can read these on their own. They are able to look and identify the rich text features and information. You can see that there are pictures and captions. Vocabulary is highlighted in yellow. And at the end of each book, inside the cover are 4 to 5 questions. So this example is 2nd grade with colonial America and what was life like there and then. Another book is called The Island of Many Wonders, What We Will See in New Guinea. And you can identify there's vocabulary words highlighted again, different text features such as captions and photographs. And at the end, the questions that students can look to utilize. Now, we've looked at quite a few different formative assessments. What summative assessments are there for young citizens that we could utilize? At the end of each chapter, there's a more formal assessment to evaluate student learning. There are review materials to assist students in preparing for the chapter test. Chapter projects. Students can work together to apply what they've learned and create something of value to the classroom, school, or community. Here we have an end of chapter test for 3rd grade. Let's take time and look at it a little more in-depthly. We can see that it's chapter 7, what challenges does our planet face? And there are different mediums of assessment. So students could write true or false, 2 different statements. There's a map to determine and address pollutants, how they get from one place to another. We see vocabulary, matching, and there is an essay question where students can write about what they know. This is a 4th grade example, chapter 1, How Are People Connected in a Community? It's an end of chapter test. And here you see graphs being utilized, multiple choice, fill in the blank, and essay questions, open-ended short answers. Another type of assessment beyond just the end of chapter test is project-based learning. And this is your chapter projects. There's 1 project per chapter. And students have the opportunity to use different skills to create their own project. They'll discover and explore, they'll research and look for answers to their questions, right? We will have discussion, revision, and communicate those skills and results publicly. Multiple skill sets would be used. The knowledge to apply is endless. They'll apply lots of different skill sets of knowledge and develop an authentic product using 21st century skills. Some examples of different chapter projects. This is a first grade project. And here we see students have been learning about the importance and function of being a family. The chapter project is supporting family connection as well as socio-emotional learning. What a happy time 6-year-olds will have making this keepsake. You can see on the project page, there is a materials list and what to cover each day. So this project would last 4 days. There's objectives and a description. And you also have a checklist for each student, what their scrapbook needs to have in it. This is an example of a 5th grade project, newspaper through time. Here you see the materials list, objectives, the description, as well as a rubric for students that cover research elements, the newspaper work, and then also collaboration with their group. Digital assessments are another summative assessment that Young Citizens offers. It gives students opportunities to practice vocabulary, skills, and concepts at home, in a computer lab, or wherever they have internet access. As digital natives, students benefit from online practice, which increases their retention of social studies concepts and literacy skills in an environment that they're comfortable in. As they practice, they develop a proficiency with technology skills and have the opportunity to develop 21st century skills. Digital assessments facilitate rigor in the classroom by building different leveled activities from depth of knowledge 1 through depth of knowledge 3 or 4. So here we see an example of a 2nd grade digital assessment, and we see all of the depth of knowledge level 1 through 4. Of course, we see that they can order, making a choice, taking the steps and putting them in order. We see them having to analyze a scenario with cost and benefits. Should Carlos go spend the night with his friend or go to sister's soccer game? And then here we see fact and opinion. They're having to determine which statements are opinion and which statements are fact. Another example is 5th grade, chapter 3, and we see that they are working on connecting ideas with vocabulary. They're examining maps, the trade routes from the Americas to Europe, and answering different questions, as well as supporting short answer questions with facts and answers that they know that apply to that. Is there such a thing as summative assessment? Gosh, we've learned a lot about formative assessments and summative assessments that Young Citizens offers. Remember the driver's test analogy? The summative assessment is much like when you go take that test at the end. You meet your goal, you show competency. The process of arriving at a grade for a student could be a test, an assignment, or a whole grade, right? Is there time to go back and reflect? Is there time to go back and adapt? Before, or if they go to take the driver's test, what happens if they don't meet the goal? Can you go back and adapt, practice? Is there really an assessment? Summative assessment. Not all formative assessments can be a summative assessment. That's your practice mode. You're taking in checkpoints as you drive. You're learning, practicing, watching, doing, making mistakes. The learner has practiced. They've learned the parts of the car. They'll mess up and make mistakes. They grow and learn continuously. What if he goes to take his driver's test and doesn't pass? He forgot a signal, or maybe he forgot to do something with parallel parking. Will we never see that student driver get his driver's license? Will that be the end of it? He just doesn't drive? No, that's not it at all. He can go back and practice. He can practice parallel parking. He can practice signaling or whatever is needed and retake the test. The driver's test becomes a formative measure, allowing the learner to practice a little bit longer and then retest again. Nothing is ever the end. There's always ways to evaluate, reflect, and amend. Is there a place for both formative and summative assessment? Yes. There's a place in education for both of these important kinds of assessments. Formative is so important as it allows teachers and students to practice and check where they are in learning. After reflecting, students move to the next goal. As teachers, we want to know our students and meet them where they are academically to help them grow and achieve. Thank you for joining us today. If you have more questions, you can look at Young Citizens and contact Social Studies School Service, and we'd be happy to help you. All right. My name is Freddie Jesus, and have a good evening.